Okay, think about this for a second. What if we could treat something as massive and messy as global conflict like a software bug? It sounds kind of wild, right? But we're going to dive into a pretty radical framework that does exactly that. It reimagines our entire world as this single massive operating system, and boy, is it in desperate need of a reboot.
So, the central idea here is that things like hunger and war, they're not these inevitable tragedies we just have to live with. Nope. The thinking is they're just bugs. They're glitches in our planet's code. And what do you do with a bug in a program? You find it, you patch it, and eventually you get rid of it for good.
All right, so let's start with diagnostics. What's the primary bug here? What's that one fundamental error that's causing all this instability in the system we're currently running?
And this really gets to the heart of the paradox. See, on one side, you've got this abundance reality. The truth is, we have enough resources for everyone on the planet. But then you look at the other side, and our systems are creating scarcity and injustice. So the problem isn't that we don't have enough stuff. The problem is the glitch right there in the middle, this deep, deep scarcity mindset that's basically hardwired into how our world works.
This is what the framework calls the legacy code. It's like trying to run modern software on a computer from the 90s. Think about traditional aid or diplomacy. They're basically just analog patches for digital problems. They're like putting a bandage on a massive wound. Sure, they might manage the symptoms for a little while, but they never, ever fix the broken code that's causing the problem in the first place.
Okay, so if the old system is totally broken, what does the reboot actually look like? I mean, how do you go about uninstalling a global scarcity mindset and installing a brand new operating system that's built from the ground up for abundance? This diagram pretty much captures the entire mission. It's about moving from the world you see on the left, one that runs on what's called extractive ROI, basically taking more than it gives back, and shifting to the world on the right. That one's based on regenerative ROI, where healthy, stable systems actually create guaranteed prosperity for everyone. So we're not talking about a simple patch here. This is a full-blown system overhaul.
And here's the absolute kicker. It's all about changing the incentives. The whole goal is to build a world where peace is literally the most profitable and logical choice you can make. It stops being some fuzzy, nice-to-have moral ideal and becomes essential infrastructure, something as critical and, frankly, as bankable as a power grid. But, of course, a fancy new operating system is totally useless if you don't have the hardware to run it on. So that leads to the next big question: who's going to build the actual physical foundation for this rebooted world? Well, the framework is pretty specific about this. It actually identifies Elon Musk as the architect for this new hardware. The idea is that his role would be to deploy all this future-proof infrastructure. We're talking autonomous transport, renewable energy, AI-driven logistics, and use it to completely transform conflict zones into these self-sustaining high-tech hubs. Now, the goal here is actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. It's all about creating economic interdependence. See, when you build these advanced systems and you make the local residents direct stakeholders, they have skin in the game. You completely change the math of conflict. If your entire livelihood is tied to that high-tech infrastructure, blowing it up is basically economic suicide. It really boils down to a simple principle: people protect what pays them.
But as the source material is quick to point out, technology by itself isn't the magic bullet. That sustained human commitment they talk about, that's the software. That's the moral code that has to run on top of all that amazing hardware to make sure it's pointed in the right direction. And that brings us right to the ethical software, the moral core of this entire system. What's going to make sure all this incredibly powerful new technology is actually used for good?
Right at the very kernel of this new OS is something called GenAI, which stands for Generative Intentional Intelligence. And here's a great way to think about it. A regular AI is like a GPS, right? It's just trying to find the fastest, most efficient route. But GenAI is more like a compass that is always pointing toward human well-being. It's an intent engine, and it's designed from the ground up to make decisions based on a moral framework. So you can see this as a huge fundamental shift. A standard AI is really just a logistics engine. It's all about the what and the where, how to move stuff around in the most efficient way. GenAI, on the other hand, is an intent engine. It starts with the who and the why. It's built to understand human context first so it can figure out the best path for people to thrive, not just the best path for a package to get delivered. And GenAI runs on this beautifully simple ethical code. It's called the guilt-free standard. It's just 3 steps.
Step 1, do no harm. Step 2, help if you can. And step 3, if you're ever unsure, just ask. That's it. It's basically the ethical BIOS for the entire planet.
Okay, so this all sounds amazing, but it's pretty theoretical, right? So how does a system like this actually prove itself in the real world? Well, it starts by fixing the most basic, fundamental bug you can possibly imagine.
The very first mission, solve the hunger bug. See, to prove that this new system really works, you have to solve an undeniable universal problem. And what's more universal than hunger? If this new OS can actually patch that bug, well, that proves the entire framework is for real.
And the way it works is by creating this incredible flywheel effect. And it all starts with one tangible product. First, you stabilize a person's individual health. That newfound stability then allows for things like land restoration, which then leads to sustainable farming. And that ultimately leads to completely self-sufficient communities. It's a chain reaction.
This real-world test is actually called the BarNess Miracle Bar Challenge. And the plan is to produce 2 million of these super nutrient-dense bars every single day. Here's the key. 50% of that production goes directly to charity to feed the hungry. This is the proof of concept. It embeds the moral mission right into a for-profit business model, and it proves that core loop, solving hunger creates stability. That stability allows for peace, and that peace, in the end, generates profit.
So once that first patch, solving hunger, is proven to work, the new operating system can start to roll out globally. And this creates a whole new network, one with really clear consequences for the people who join in and, well, for those who don't.
And in this new reality, a new global divide starts to form. You've got two groups. On one side, you have the solution builders. These are the people participating in this new regenerative ecosystem, and the system rewards them for it. But on the other side, you've got the obstructionists, the ones who profit from scarcity and conflict in the old, broken system. But here's the really interesting part. The new OS doesn't treat them like enemies to be fought. It treats them like bugs or viruses in the network that need to be isolated and patched.
And this, right here, might be the ultimate takeaway. In this system, things like conflict, corruption, and just plain non-cooperation, they literally slow the whole network down. They reduce its processing speed. So peace and stability stop being just these nice moral goals. They actually become technical requirements for maximizing the network's performance and its profitability.
So when you boil it all down, this entire framework leaves us with one really powerful question. It challenges all of us to stop trying to just patch old broken code, and instead to ask ourselves, if our world really is an operating system, what happens when we finally install an update that's designed from its very core for abundance instead of scarcity?